So today we'll scratch the surface of designing a human-centered organization. One thing to keep in mind is based on my personal experience, mainly with in-house teams and quite big companies. So just keep in mind as we walk through all the stuff. But the first thing that we have to define is what is a human-centered organization. So a human-centered organization is an organized group of people that comes together with a purpose of fulfilling humans' need with a solution and eventually deliver a business model around that solution. But what is the connection between a human-centered organization and design? What is the connection between human centricity and the practice of design? So I like the definition that I just learned at the Stanford School. That's simple, plain and simple. Design, it's a human-centered mindset. But design is a verb and exists only in the act of designing. So how we define designing? For me, designing is the practice of generating value through problem solving. With these three definitions, we implied a lot, I'm aware of, but three things stand out. First, the primary goal of a human-centered organization is to fulfill humans' need. Doesn't matter if you just try to find a way to bring water to a village in Africa, or if you work for a company that just wants to provide accommodation like Airbnb. So fulfilling humans' needs first, and then the business model, always after. And the way we want to scale this mindset across the company is the ultimate goal, right? So imagine a company when every relevant problem is solved using a human-centered mindset, which means that every time you solve a problem that is not for you, you have to be able to do something in order to increase the quality of your solution. But before even thinking about getting there, you have to acknowledge that designing is an event that happens in 3 dimensions, and that you can break down into 3, the thinking activity, the doing activity, and the environment in which the thinking and doing happen. And this is important, so when you want to change an organization or you want to create from scratch an organization, you have to come up with a program initiative that touch all 3 dimensions. And the main reason why a lot of the people they fail try to bring design in-house is because they fail addressing one or more of these dimensions. They maybe foster the thinking and the doing, but they don't create the right environment. Or they start from the environment, and they don't know how to trigger the behavior in people, right, across the workforce. So what I mean by thinking, doing, and environment. So the thinking ability is mainly driven by the ability to get a deep, holistic human understanding. Again, if you want to solve a problem for someone else, you have to be able to connect with that person and understand what are the drivers, and as we like to call it as a designer, what are the needs. And the doing is the ability to generate new solution and possibility, right? And then you have the environment. The environment is basically the main catalyzer. If you don't build the right environment, the thinking they're doing, it's really hard to see something happen. And if it happen because you put super extra effort, it doesn't last because the environment is not reinforcing that type of behavior. And we will discuss more and we will show more about in a minute. So changing a place, changing a group of people is not a linear process, right? But has some steps and phases that it makes sense to go through in that specific order. And today we will go through these steps. They are not exhaustive by any means because of the time constraint that we have. If you want to go deeper, you can go on my website. You can download one of the papers that we release on that subject that goes a little bit deeper in every aspect. But the first thing we have to say is that it has to be top down and bottom up. So if you think about it, we all got a cold call. Right? Oh, we want to bring design in-house, come here, and then we want to change everything. We want to be like Apple. We want to be like another company, the company X. And then you say, okay, how many designers in the company? Well, if you join, one, right? Then you say, okay, cool. But does the CEO knows about that plan? No. We will change everything from the bottom. This doesn't work. If you just hear someone say we can change the company from the bottom, you never tried. That's why revolution usually use weapons, right? Because if you want to change something from the bottom, you will reach a point when the people in control, they will say, look, that's my environment. If I disagree, you don't change anything. So if you don't have a CEO, someone very senior that sponsored these initiatives, you don't go anywhere. And every time you want to create a large-scale change, you have to keep in mind that you have to go through 4 operational layers. The first, you have to teach the skill, and we will see more in a minute. You can't expect someone to do something differently if you don't teach them, right? It's not even fair. And then you have to provide the tools. Okay, I want you to behave that way, but you don't provide the tools. So that person, it doesn't have the opportunity, right, to do the right thing. Then you have to define the rules of your environment. And on top of that, you put the norms. What is accepted in that company? Is shipping crap something that we can do? I don't know, right? So you have to define. If you say we don't ship crap, we don't cut corners, or at least if we do, as we see in the previous talk, we do with the rationality, not just for the sake of delivery, that's fine. Otherwise, and this is something that iterating these 4 layers, they will help you to establish a good culture. So the first step, you have to prepare the change. Whatever change you wanna see happen in a place, you have to prepare that change. You have to give the people a reason to change, but you have to explain why, right? They join the company, they join a different company, you are envisioning a completely different one. You have to explain where you are and where you want to go, right? And that's why the big sponsor, senior sponsor, if you are lucky, you're working on a company with the CEO, that's fine. But if you don't have that person because maybe it doesn't have the time to be always present, can delegate to someone else that by extension can possess the same decisional power. Because as we will see today, the change demand by this type of goal are so profound, are cross-functional, then if you are like a VP of design or director of experience, right? And then you want to change how finance work or HR works. You'll never be able to do it because then you have the head of HR, the head of finance, that they have different goals. And as you will see today, a good program is a program that aligns everything on the same rationality and on the same goal. So that person usually is the one that iterates the vision and they just say, okay, that's where we are today. I don't know, simple example. we are starting to become irrelevant in the market. We are losing share, whatever. I was working for Ryanair And when I joined the company as a head of design, the goal was, look, we are losing customer with EasyJet, Vueling, and then we also won the prize as the worst brand on the planet. So that was an achievement, right? So we knew what was the goal, right? So that person is the person that every time he does an interview, every time he shares an idea, is always iterating the same concept. The people, they look up at that person and say, if that guy say that, you can be sure that spread down to the entire company. And then you have to articulate the vision, right? You articulate the vision, but then you need to use a goal-setting tool to break down everything and show everyone what is his small piece of achievement and in the way that person contributes to the grand scheme of things, right? So it doesn't matter if you use OKR, Google will use OKR, and a friend of mine in his own company uses 4DX, is similar to OKR. It doesn't really matter. As long as it's default to open, everyone can access. So ask yourself, can you see your director goals? Can you see your VP goals for the next quarter? Can you see your CEO goals for the next quarter? You should be able to do it, because otherwise you get detached from the direction of the company. And then you have to define the cognitive precondition. What I mean by that is that we know that words are so important, right? The word that they affect the perception that we have, right? Big leaders, they change the word just talking, inspiring people. So now we see an example, but the idea behind this concept is that you have to reframe the way people, they perceive themselves. So when I was at Sony, instead of call the guy product owner, we call experience planner. Simple, right? So if I ask someone something as a product owner, he will start to define the product. He will start to take decision based on what is best for the product. But if I call you experience planner, right? Day by day, the perception of what is expected for you, and by the way, we should specify that, but start to change. And the way you look at yourself, the image that you have of what is your goal, start to change. In that case, for us, it was the person, is the product owner, right? But it's the person that planned the experience, because what we care about is the final experience. And a human-centered organization is focused on the final experience. And someone else touched that point. If you want to teach, if you remember the 4 operational layers, the bottom one is this, you have to teach the skill, right? But you have to keep in mind that there is 2 different ways of learning. You have the individual and passive way, and then you have the collective and active way, right? That's why if you just circulate the design thinking bootleg from the Stanford, the PDF, or you just, okay, you know what, I'm going to pay you, go to the conference and then come back and say something, right? That's the retention that you have. That's why you should promote this discussion inside the company, and you should make the practice mandatory, because only through the practice the people, they can change their own behavior. And then institutionalizing the change, and I'm thinking about Apple. There was the Apple University, but we saw the huge, right? The huge school, they're doing the same. So basically, you invite people to teach, because when you need to teach, you have to go through an extra struggle. You have to articulate and clarify your thoughts, which then increase retention, right? In terms of learning. And then you have to define the social preconditions. Social precondition is what sets the norms in an environment. And something that I learned in the psychology department is that you can't really change someone directly. There is no way. It's not like a piece of plastic, you can bend it, right? You can only trigger, you can only provide and share triggers that are meaningful to that person and wait and see for the reaction. That's the only thing you can do. If someone suggests something different, I will be skeptical because that's the only thing you can do. So create the right social environment, look what happened, measure and iterate, and we will see in the next step. So on the right, you can see if what we are mentioning here belongs to which level of the operational framework. You can see if what's supposed to be, the level of seniority of that change. And you can see if the change affect the thinking, the doing, or the environment. So, are you rewarding individual or collective behavior? I know that it sounds common sense, right? But what is the rationality behind the bonus assignment in your company, right? If you hit your goal, your own goal as an employee, right? Or maybe you do a performance review with your manager. If everything is fine, you get a bonus. Or if you, sales or something like that. But when you work on wicked problems, a human-centered organization usually work on wicked problems, you end up operating inside a multidisciplinary approach, right? So it doesn't matter how good you are, you'll never be able to possess all the skill and the knowledge that you need to get the job done. So if I give you a bonus just because you do something good, if a moment in time, if we will have a moment in time when you have to decide between do what is best for you in order to get the bonus and go to Hawaii with your family, or do what is best for the team, what do you think would be the decision? Right? Family first. That's normal, right? But it's not the employee's fault. It's the company that doesn't give you the opportunity to do the right thing. So when you assign, for example, the bonus, you get an individual bonus only for collective performance. This is something that changed drastically the behavior of people. Because if you do what is best for you, you don't get the bonus. Sorry. You don't get reward in these people if you just do what is best for you. And then, are we rewarding delivery or positive feedback and learning? When we want to build a human-centered organization, we have to implement what is called a continuous learning feedback. Because most of the time, you end up working on wicked problem that, as we know, compared to the same problem, a problem that has already happened in the past, we can look back, learn from the past experience, think about building a bridge. We have the Millennium Bridge. We want to build another bridge 10 feet away from the bridge, from that one. We call Calatrava, the architect, and he say, okay, what can you tell me about the terrain? What can you tell me about the challenges? What can you tell me about everything, right? And then we can reapply those skills. But a wicked problem is a ill-defined problem that is based on top of dynamic environment. Think about the urbanistic plan in London. Let's say we fix some of the traffic problem that we have here in London. We can't just get that solution and apply to Tokyo. Because Tokyo is completely different, right? And when there is humans involved, 99% of the time is a wicked problem. Your life is a wicked problem. Discover your passion is another wicked problem. And the approach has to be different. So, if we want to establish that continuous learning feedback cycle, why we just, drink beer when we deliver something? I see it happen all the time. Oh, it's Friday, which, by the way, it's Friday, let's deliver the product, right? Oh, beer. Ah. Why we do that? Why? So what's the goal? Shipping or having an impact? But here, again, and I can't stress enough about that, you have to align everything in the company if you want to change behavior. You can't just say, I want you to have an impact, and then I give you individual bonus, and then I reward you because you ship So you should wait for the feedback that you get. And then you have to pass the message that you win or you learn. And what I mean by that is that it's okay to succeed, and it's also okay to fail if you learn something that will presumably avoid you to go into the same mistake. And then, are you allocating budget per year or per problem to solve? This is another, that's why I say, look, if you are the best sponsor in your company is the head of design, how can you change the way you allocate budget in your company? There is no way that the design can change this thing. That's why I say don't believe someone that say, oh, well, you can change the company from the bottom. No, you can't. Not only from the bottom. You need, but not only. So, you should have a problem-driven roadmap. That should be your goal. Not feature-driven, not even experience-driven, problem-driven. What is the next problem that we have to solve in order to make the next step? What is the small piece of information that we need to increase the degree of confidence in order to move to the next step? For example, I was working for a company in the healthcare in London, and the goal was try to reinvent the healthcare and design the first artificial intelligent doctor. So when you have this type of wicked problem, if you don't move with this approach, you don't go anywhere. Or you end up copying other people. But innovation happens in a different environment. So grab a group of people, a multidisciplinary group of people, and then you say, look, that's the problem that we have to solve. Let's say I'm the stakeholder. Okay, that's the problem that we want to solve. That's what we need to understand in order to make the next step. It can be we have to design the new smartphone. We have to design the new TV, the new service. Doesn't really matter. What we need to understand. And you assign the problem, you assign the target, and then they get the vision from the top, right? And then they go for one iteration, and then they come back, and they say, look, we hit the target, right? Everything was good. What do you want to do? Okay, that's what we know. We can find another round. Or the team can come back and say, look, we didn't hit the target, but we have the confidence that if you found another round, we will do it. Or they can come back and say, look, no, we believe that's the wrong problem to solve. We realized that this is not useful for us. And for example, the way that they are functioning in the Google X team is that they assign a problem, and then your goal is to kill the idea that you had. And the reason is because how many ways to succeed you may have in order to succeed? A lot, right? You can do it this, slightly like this, slightly like this. Then you have to decide which one is best. But what's the minimum number of evidence that you need in order to kill something, right? It's just one. If you want to build flying cars, and then you come back with the finding that say we can't build flying cars because we can't design the engine that we need, you just need one. You kill the idea, you move forward, right? But if you allocate the budget for the year, you would see after 12 months, those guys come back, but no, well, yeah, that's a complete disalignment, right? With the type of approach that you need when you work on wicked problems. And then, are you signing off everything, all the steps? Again, that's common sense. But if you have that group and you assign the problem, you have to let them go away and then come back. Because probably they know more than you. And for sure, they will have the domain knowledge required to take important decisions. But again, this seems so stupid things to say, right? But look around and maybe you see people sign off sketches. Okay, let's have a review for the sketches. Let's have a review for the wireframe. Let's make a review for the mock-ups. We saw before, right? The presentation before. You have to send them to someone and then come back. Why do you don't just trust people, right? You give them everything they need to make the right decision, and then you trust them. The team that created the Mac was 9 people in 1984, 9 people, including design, engineering, and everything else. You don't need like 200 people to solve a meaningful problem. And then, are you supporting the process? Because if you ask people to behave in a different way, you can't just say that and okay, well, we'll see in a week, right? You have to help them, providing the tool. One example is the one. We created the human-centered canvas. It's just map the design thinking process. And then this is useful for designers, but even more for non-designers. For every step, explain what you have to do, what are the driving question. And then you just compile, and then you use this piece of paper to track the iteration. And then there is also a digital form, then you can archive, and you can see what is the result at the end of the sprint. What happened after the validation. And then we have the space. This is just an example. It's not that it has to be that way. It's just an example. If you operate in an environment that doesn't allow you to do the right thing, or to have a proper thinking and doing activity, it just doesn't happen, right? Because you adapt to the environment, to the limitation, the constraint that you have. And you may break the rules, and you may make a lot of noise once or twice, but then, if you have to fight against your own environment, you end up, you know what, I just leave the company, or I adapt myself. An example is that something that worked very, very well for us in the past was to allocate an independent and safe space to a multidisciplinary team. So the team has a space for individual thinking when someone can go deep on something, doing something. Nobody can just bust your balls and say, oh, you know what, what's about that email? No, that's like silence room. We don't talk here, right? Don't talk to me. I'm just invisible, right? And then you have another area, right? When the entire team got it together and say, look, that's what we want to do. On each wall, you put the requirements, so everything is always under control. You don't need short-term memory to keep everything in your mind. It's on the wall, and you use your short-term memory to make meaningful connection. That's what design is about, right? And then you have the recreational one. You can unplug, you go there, but that is just because you don't want people leaving the area if they still want to engage inside the company, and it's always nice to a casual meeting, other stuff, some plans, whatever you want to do. Something similar to this happened at Spotify. Spotify office, they are 90% like that. And then you have to measure the change. But design adoption is not something that can be measured as a single concept. It usually manifests itself as a butterfly effect. You change something here, and you see something there. You can't get a one KPI that runs them all. So I will suggest something here, but again, this is just an example. So something that you can do to understand the scale of human-centered mindset, it can be, for example, the employee that you train, the coaches that you create, or the human-centered project that you are running. Because something that we didn't touch, but you have to start small and then grow inside the company. And then some of the KPIs you use for the thinking is the time that the team is spent in that thinking area, or the days without user interaction. Look, I see, for example, 45 days without user interaction. That doesn't look good to me, right? And that is part of the leader responsibilities, right? Number of users involved, number of problems reframed, how many briefs you got, how many problems you reframed as a team. That's a good indicator for the team performance, right? So a number of hypotheses generated, that's you can see how prolific is a team. And then the doing, time span doing, then you can compare with the thinking and see how much they switch from one to another, and you can start to understand the behavior, how much struggle they are going through with that problem. And then the number of prototype per project, prototype per feature, concurrent prototypes for the same ideas, prototyping side rate. If it's very high, which means that the team is very good. They are learning a lot from each prototype. They are learning, it's quite low, which means they are missing the right angle, right? And then those two are indirect KPIs for the environment. But something you can put on top of that is the engagement, the satisfaction, the motivation, and then the one I love is the interruptions. And again, we didn't touch that, but we should say, for example, that we recommended approach is to use email for something, external communication, and then asynchronous chat for internal, and never mix them. Because otherwise you end up saying, oh, I have to download my email to understand if there is something from my friends. And you don't know, maybe it's just email from the other department, and you're wasting your time. And the average time to recover is 23 minutes for every person, every time they get kicked out from the float zone. 23 minutes. If I pay you $250, you work for Facebook or Google, 23 minutes, the average number of interruption is 8 to 9. At the end of the year, millions in underperforming. So, summarizing, doesn't matter how you approach, but the sequence is grounded into psychology and sociology. And again, if you want to go deeper, you can just have to go to my website and download the paper. But generally speaking, you have to prepare the change. You have to explain why you do something, right? Imagine you have your girlfriend, you want to do something. You can't just, oh, let's do it, right? And then you see her look at you like, yeah, why? I don't understand, right? That's still human relationship. Same story with the organization. You can't ask someone to abandon old habits without show the values of the new ones. That's common sense, right? But that doesn't happen. And then you have to align the vision, the goals, and the objective. And then you have to reframe the roles if you can, because that's help the people to see them in a different way than a new one. You have to teach the skill. You can't be just pretend someone changes behavior if he doesn't know what to do. You have to provide the tools. And if you can, I'm thinking of, for example, IBM. They have created the design thinking certification. It's something that institutionalizes the achievement in the company. It's not like, oh, no. Now you know human-centered design, right? No, it's something that you get reward in the company for that. And maybe you get the bonus for that. That's going to be a cool idea. And then the social, you have to reframe the reward system, the budget system, and give decision-making autonomy to people if you want to see them growing and be prolific in your company. And then you have to quantify the adoption with behavioral metrics, non-operational. You can't just say, we all know the design index, right? Oh, the design plus 226. Who give a shit about 226, right? That's just the CEO and the shareholders. But you can't think about money if you are wise enough to understand that you have to achieve something first, and money are just a consequence. And then you have to keep in mind that whatever strategy, initiative, or plan you put in place, you have to address the thinking, the doing, and the environment. Thank you very much.